Hi guys, so a topic that comes up a lot in the study of historical hand-to-hand combat with weapons mostly, and unarmed martial arts to an extent, and also modern hand-to-hand combat, whether it's knife, defence against knife, bayonet fighting, these kind of things, is the commonly held perception. I imagine this is mostly from watching too many films, and perhaps from books as well, that when people are stabbed or shot, they obligingly fall down dead. And of course this isn't the reality. Historical accounts of combat and modern accounts of warfare and crime as well show that sometimes, and in fact not irregularly, people can be repeatedly shot with things, arrows, bullets, all sorts of other things, or stabbed, or chopped at, or cut at, and hit in the head with things, and still carry on functioning. And in fact there are accounts of people being fatally wounded, i.e. they die 2 or 5 minutes later, but still functioning for long enough to fulfill some kind of important role in that conflict. So examples of people being shot through the body and then bayoneting several of their opponents, and these sort of things happened in the First World War, and of course both before and after that sort of period. So I came across one account that I thought I'd read to you. It's featured in Swordsman of the British Empire by D.A. Kinsley, which is available through Lulu Books online, and I wrote an intro for it. But this part is from Mr. Kinsley's research, and it describes an encounter between a British officer and an Afghan. So it says, "The encounter with these desperate men, that is the Afghans, was terrific. One of their number brought down Brigadier Sale by a cut to the face with his sharp shamshir," shamshir being a type of sabre. "The Afghan repeated his blow at his opponent as his opponent was falling, but the pommel, not the edge of the sword, this time took effect, though with stunning violence. He lost his footing, however, in the effort, and so the Briton and the Afghan rolled together on the ground. Thus situated, the first care of the brigadier was to master the weapon of his adversary. So he snatched at it, but one of his fingers met the edge of the trenchant blade. He quickly withdrew the wounded hand and adroitly replaced it over that of his adversary, so as to keep fast the hilt of his shamshir. But he had an active and powerful opponent, and was himself faint from loss of blood. Captain Kershaw of the 13th Light Infantry happened in the melee to approach the scene of the conflict. The wounded leader recognised and called for aid from Kershaw. Kershaw therefore passed his drawn sabre through the body of the Afghan, but still the desperado continued to struggle with frantic violence. At length, in the fierce grapple, the brigadier for a moment got the uppermost. Still retaining the weapon of his enemy in his left hand, he dealt him with his right hand a cut from his own sabre, which cleft his skull from the crown to the eyebrows, there to there. The Afghan shouted, 'Oh God!' presumably not in English, and never spoke or moved again. The leader of the column regained his feet, and feeling himself for the moment incapable of personal exertion, yet calmly directed the movements of his men, who, after a fierce struggle, in which many ghastly wounds were exchanged, had now established themselves within the walls of the place that they were besieging." So there we have an example of someone who was cut in the face, pommelled in the head, then rolled around on the ground with his opponent whilst grappling at his opponent, trying to grab the opponent's sword. And incidentally, grabbing the opponent's weapon, he wounded his hand, but it saved his life. And this is something that comes up a lot in knife defence, and in modern defence, not just in historical martial arts. If grabbing your weapon and cutting your hand is the only thing you can do to save your life, then you do it. So not only having sustained these wounds and managing to roll around on the ground and restrain the other person's weapon, he then chopped the guy through his head, through his enemy's head, and his enemy still managed to exclaim something before expiring. But what's important is, in the middle of that, one of his assistants, one of his fellow officers, thrust his sword entirely through the Afghan, and the Afghan carried on fighting. So, and you know, if you read Swordsman of the British Empire or other books which are compilations of historical sources like this, you'll find examples over and over and over again of people who were wounded, sometimes fatally, sometimes just a very nasty wound, and continued to fight, and sometimes won. And there are accounts of duels where people were thrust through repeatedly, and then either both people fell down dead or one survived. And of course in warfare this happened. So there we go. I just want to dispel the idea that that there is a magic bullet or a lightsaber-like sword that strikes people down in a guaranteed fashion. Yes, sometimes people die from one gunshot wound or from one thrust through the body or one cut in the head, but often they don't. So you can't count on it. Thank you.